Welcome to this session on Policy Frameworks for Sustainable Tourism Development, presented by Isabel Contreras Ocana and Alicia Rodamarillo, in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce of Granada. Tourism, when guided effectively, can be a powerful driver of economic growth, cultural exchange, and community empowerment. However, to ensure its long-term sustainability, policies are essential to balance tourism activity with environmental protection and the well-being of local communities. In this presentation, we will explore the distinction between regulatory and policy frameworks, the fundamental principles that underpin sustainable tourism policies, and key examples of international and European strategies that demonstrate how tourism can evolve responsibly. Through this session, we aim to highlight the importance of transparent governance, long-term planning, and inclusive decision-making in shaping a sustainable future for tourism. Let us delve into how policies can transform tourism into a tool for environmental preservation and community enrichment. To understand how governments and other entities develop policies and strategic plans that guide tourism development sustainably, promoting a balance between tourism activity, the well-being of local communities, and environmental protection. The difference between a regulatory framework and a policy framework lies mainly in their focus and role within a legal or management system. The key distinctions are as follows. Regulatory framework. This refers to the set of laws, regulations, standards, and guidelines established to govern a specific activity or sector. In other words, it is the system of legal rules and requirements that guide and control actions within a defined area. The regulatory framework sets the legal obligations and restrictions that must be followed by those involved, such as businesses, governments, and citizens, to comply with established standards. Compliance is typically mandatory, and those who violate these regulations may face sanctions or legal consequences. Policy framework. On the other hand, a policy framework refers to the strategies, guidelines, and principles adopted by governments or institutions to address issues at national or international levels. Policy frameworks set priorities and goals for specific areas, but are not necessarily binding, unlike legal regulations. In this sense, a policy framework may be more flexible and visionary, aimed at guiding decisions and actions in a broader context without necessarily imposing specific restrictions. Additionally, policy frameworks often evolve in response to social, economic, or international changes. In summary, the regulatory framework is related to specific laws and regulations that are mandatory and govern behavior, while the policy framework refers to broader strategies and guidelines that guide decision-making and policy definition without necessarily imposing direct legal obligations. The basic principles of sustainable tourism policies are fundamental guidelines that seek to ensure tourism develops in a way that benefits local communities, protects the environment, and contributes to long-term economic development. Some of these key principles include respect for local culture and values. Tourism should be an opportunity to foster respect for the traditions, customs, and cultural heritage of host communities. This involves raising awareness among both tourists and service providers about the importance of preserving local cultures. Environmental conservation. Policies should promote practices that minimize the environmental impact of tourism, such as sustainable management of natural resources, reducing pollution, responsible use of water and energy, and ecosystem protection. Ecotourism and biodiversity conservation initiatives are examples of this principle in action. Economic benefits for local communities. Sustainable tourism should generate income and employment for local communities, contributing to economic development without overexploiting natural or cultural resources. Policy should encourage the active participation of communities in tourism planning and management. Accessibility and equity. Sustainable tourism policies should ensure that all tourists, regardless of origin, physical ability, or economic status, can enjoy tourism experiences in an accessible and equitable way. This includes eliminating physical, social, and economic barriers to tourism access. Integrated management and long-term planning. Tourism development should be managed in an integrated manner, considering social, economic, and environmental aspects. Planning should be sustainable, long-term, and consider the needs of all stakeholders, including governments, businesses, local communities, and tourists. Education and awareness. It is essential to educate tourists as well as tourism operators and local communities about the importance of sustainable tourism. Policies should promote awareness about the impact of tourism activities and encourage responsible behavior. Transparency and governance. Decision-making in tourism should be inclusive, participatory, and transparent, ensuring that all stakeholders, governments, businesses, communities, and tourists have a voice in tourism management. This also involves accountability and implementing measures to ensure long-term sustainability. These principles are designed to guide tourism policies and strategies, ensuring that the sector develops in a balanced way, without compromising resources and opportunities for future generations. International policies on sustainable tourism. UN Tourism, UNWTO, the United Nations body oversees promoting responsible, sustainable, and accessible tourism for all. As the leading international organization in tourism, UNWTO advocates the development of policies that encourage tourism's contribution to economic growth, inclusive development, and environmental sustainability, offering leadership and support to expand tourism knowledge and policy globally. Key strategic areas include: integrate tourism into the global agenda, promote tourism as a driver of socioeconomic growth and development, advocating for its priority status in national and international policies, and the need for a neutral playing field for the sector to thrive. Enhance tourism competitiveness. Improve tourism competitiveness among UNWTO members by creating and sharing knowledge, developing human resources, and promoting excellence in areas such as tourism planning, statistics, market trends, sustainable tourism development, marketing, product development, and risk and crisis management. Promote sustainable tourism development, support policies and practices that make optimal use of environmental resources, respect the sociocultural authenticity of host communities, and provide economic benefits for all. Boost tourism's role in poverty reduction and development, maximize tourism's contribution to poverty reduction and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, positioning tourism as a tool for development and promoting its inclusion on the development agenda. Foster knowledge, education, and training. Help countries assess and address their educational and training needs, providing networks to facilitate knowledge creation and sharing. Forge partnerships. Partner with the private sector, regional and local tourism organizations, educational and research institutions, civil society, and the United Nations system to build a more sustainable, responsible, and competitive tourism sector. Global Code of Ethics for Tourism, 1999. Encourages cultural respect, environmental protection, and fair practices. UNWTO promotes policies aimed at minimizing tourism's negative impact on the environment and local communities, advocating for a tourism sector that preserves natural resources and respects local culture. One of the main pillars is the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism, established in 1999 to promote responsible and sustainable tourism through principles and recommendations for all stakeholders in the tourism sector, including governments, businesses, tourists, and local communities. Its main goal is to ensure that tourism fosters mutual understanding and respect across cultures. Environmental strategic areas include cultural heritage protection and respect for local cultures. For example, in historical destinations like Machu Picchu in Peru, the authorities implement diary visitor limits and designate routes to help and protect structures and reduce site impact. Tourist guides receive training on cultural significance, fostering respect for local traditions in line with the Code's principles. Accessible tourism for all. Cities like Barcelona adapt their tourism infrastructure, transportation, accommodations, attractions, to accommodate people with disabilities. That includes accessible facilities and museums, adapted transport, and specific routes for people with limited mobility, ensuring inclusive tourism, aligning with universal accessibility guidelines. Environmental impact reduction. The Maldives has implemented policies that regulate tourism-generated waste and promote sustainable practices at resorts. For example, many resorts have adopted the use of renewable energy, limit the use of single-use plastics, and conduct campaigns for visitors to respect marine life. These actions are aligned with the Code's principle that calls for minimizing the environmental impact of tourism. Combat labor and sexual exploitation. In countries like Thailand and Cambodia, awareness campaigns and programs aimed at eradicating labor and sexual exploitation in tourism, often in collaboration with NGOs and international bodies, to educate tourists and tourism workers, aligning with the Code's stance against exploitation. Economic empowerment of local communities. In Costa Rica, sustainable tourism initiatives emphasize local economic inclusion, promoting ecotourism and community-managed activities to ensure that tourism's economic benefits stay local, supporting the Code's advocacy for fair community participation. In Europe, numerous countries and regions have adopted sustainable tourism policies that promote environmental conservation, social inclusion, and balanced economic development. Here are some notable examples. Sustainable tourism in the Balearic Islands, Spain. The government has implemented policies to reduce the impact of mass tourism, promoting responsible tourism through awareness campaigns and sustainable tourism destinations. Certification for businesses meeting environmental, social, and economic sustainability standards. Policies also limit the number of tourists in environmentally and culturally sensitive areas, such as Estrenc Beach and Serra de Tramontana, to protect these spaces from overexploitation. The Green Deal and EU Sustainable Tourism Strategy. In 2020, the European Union launched the Green Deal with the aim of making Europe the first carbon-neutral continent by 2050. Within this framework, specific policies have been developed for the tourism sector that include promoting sustainable transport, such as using trains instead of short flights, reducing greenhouse gas emissions in tourist destinations, and promoting circular economy practices, such as efficient waste management and recycling in tourist destinations. In addition, the EU promotes low-impact tourism through the certification of destinations as sustainable, as part of its commitment to sustainability. Green tourism in the Netherlands. Known for its focus on ecotourism and sustainable mobility, the Netherlands encourages cycling as the main tourist transport mode, with an extensive network of bike lanes along major routes. Policies also support rural and sustainable tourism, promoting activities like birdwatching and hiking in nature parks, seeking to balance tourism development with environmental conservation. Regulation in the Pyrenees National Park, France and Spain. In the cross-border area of the Pyrenees National Park, which covers French and Spanish territory, policies are applied that restricts vehicle access in protected areas to avoid pollution and environmental degradation. It promotes ecotourism with specialized nature guides and offers educational programs for tourists on biodiversity and ecosystem conservation. Sustainable tourism in Iceland. Iceland has integrated sustainability into its tourism strategy with environmental conservation policies. Strict regulations limit visitor numbers and restrict access to vulnerable areas, such as the Golden Circle and Thingvellir National Park. Iceland has also invested in green infrastructure, like eco-trails and waste management systems in tourist areas, and promotes low-impact sustainable tourism to preserve its unique natural environment. Sustainable tourism certification in Switzerland. Switzerland has policies to promote sustainable tourism in its Alps, incentivizing tourism businesses to obtain green certifications, such as Green Globe or the Swiss Tourism Certification for Sustainability. These certifications recognize destinations and operators that implement sustainable practices, such as using renewable energy, waste management, protecting local fauna and flora, and promoting sustainable transportation options like trains and buses instead of private vehicles. Policies are essential for guiding sustainable tourism. They protect the environment, support local communities, and foster economic growth. Successful examples from Europe demonstrate the importance of inclusive and transparent planning to create a more sustainable future for tourism. Thank you for your time.